Brent, welcome to Marriage Monday here at WSAU, WSAU.com. You've got the distinction of being the first road trip that I've made since March.
Wow, yeah,
For
well, I
one of
appreciate
these, but you know how that's gone since mid-March. Have you got your Zoom game strong, your virtual meeting game strong?
I do. I don't, even though I'm still young in a sense, I don't profess to be the technology expert. So, I've handled the same frustrations I'm sure people older than me have handled with why can't you hear me on the other end? Why is the speaker not working? Can you see me now? So, yeah, there's no substitute for in-person meetings. There's no substitute for just in-person discourse with somebody, and I've missed that, as I'm sure many have. But we've done our best to maintain safety during the times that this pandemic has certainly fluctuated throughout the last few months.
Yeah, and as things have slowly opened back up, I mean, in Wausau, we're still talking about offering the virtual meetings through at least August. I'm sure down here for city council and things like that, committees, you've certainly had those same, frustrations, as you said, or certainly taken those same precautions, as some might say as well.
Yeah, we did a good job down here, the best we could. We got through the April voting when people were concerned. We took a lot of safety precautions at the ballot box, from safety glass to individual pens, gloves, sanitizer, the whole thing. And we've maintained all of our meetings. I don't think we canceled any specific meeting as a result of the pandemic. We still have the opportunity for public participation. People can come in person if they want to. Council members can come in person, audience can come in person. People can call in, people can Zoom in. We felt it really important, as I'm sure most did, the business of government has to go on, and good times are bad. And these certainly weren't good times, but we still have work to do. And we still felt it important to involve the public as much as possible. So that's what we did.
Yeah, and again, we're just continuing to push through this. I mean, are things normal right now? No, not really, but we've at least opened some things back up here. What is, kind of the feel been down here in Mosinee? Are people a little more comfortable out in public, or are you still seeing people shelter in place, as we've said?
Well, I grew up here, so I have been here aside from being away at school and work for a little bit before I moved back. I've seen what business is like in good times and bad. And certainly I think it's been sort of night and day. Before the pandemic took off, like most communities, I think we were enjoying a great economic time. We had new businesses starting in Mosinee. Some of our bar restaurants downtown, especially our newest one with our brewery, you could walk in on a Friday night or even a weeknight when there are events there and see it packed, and that was so encouraging. And now it's refreshing that things were allowed to open back up. That was certainly exciting for all of us to be able to go back to business if we chose to. But I think it's a combination of, there's some of that fear still lingering out there among people that may not just be ready yet to go back out and frequent a business. And then also a lot of these businesses are, I think, taking precautions to appreciate that in their customers, and that limits the number of people that come into the business. So it's not like it was several months ago, but I am certainly thankful that the state Supreme Court gave us a chance to get back to business in mid-May. And I think I'm seeing it pick up slowly but surely. So I'm cautiously optimistic that we are on the way back to where we were. But is it going to be next week, next month? I don't know. I saw a report out earlier this week from an independent group that had estimated the job recovery is still going to take until the end of 2021 before we're back to where we were in Wisconsin. And I've seen other reports, I'm sure you have, that have said perhaps double-digit percentages of businesses won't come back in certain areas. this has crushed them, and that is a very sad prospect. But you know, and Mosinee is a small community too. It's hard to bounce back maybe as strong as some larger communities that have a bigger customer base. But we worked very hard in Mosinee to try through those difficult times to support our small businesses. I know you and I talked. I think Mosinee was the first community that pioneered a city grant program for local non-franchise small business. We only had $25,000 to work with, but we used it all in a short amount of time, and it was spread out. I think close to 25 businesses, I know it was certainly over 20, took benefit of that program. And I had some say to me when they opened back up in mid-May that at that point, at least, that was the only form of assistance they had gotten. You know, we're able to move a little faster at the local level than the machinery of the state or federal government is able to sometimes, and we just felt that was important. So we did our best to keep people alive during that time in terms of keeping their business alive or able to come back, and I think I've seen most of them come back, and like I said, I'm cautiously optimistic that we're on the tail end of this.
I think a lot of people are hopeful of that as well. I mean, we don't know yet if we'll see a second round. We've seen numbers increasing throughout the area. So how many? Obviously, you see the numbers every night on the news. Are you still in contact with health officials and still being prepared to make decisions in the event that we do see a month or two from now a second wave that's worse than the first?
Well, you know, we certainly are well aware of the recommendations of the CDC, the recommendations of the Marathon County Health Department, and we certainly don't have a requirement in place. We don't have an emergency order in place. I never did put an emergency order in place because I trusted people to be responsible for themselves. You can't, of course, recognize that every single individual is going to take every single precaution that's recommended, but I think for the most part, businesses have recognized that if they want to get their customers back, at least for now, they've taken steps to be a little safer. And I think people who choose to go out and frequent those businesses. People who are more concerned stay home. In terms of a second wave coming, am I concerned? Of course I am, if there was a second wave to hit. I think what concerns me though more so is as we move into the typical flu season that comes up late next year, you know, is there going to be an unsubstantiated fear out there that people are confusing? Well, I have some symptoms. Is this the flu? Is it COVID-19? I guess I encourage people to go get tested, but you know, that's a concern because I think we need to be prepared for that as we come into the flu season and differentiate between the two. And also, you know, the numbers have certainly, I know in some areas there's been recent spikes. You know, I think we're going to see that, and I think no one disputed that as we open back up, we may see more cases. Also, though, we've gotten better around the country than we were when this first took off in late February, early March, at having more tests available, at having more people taking the tests. And I think as people on both sides of the aisle have said, as we've gotten availability for more tests, you're going to see more positive cases. Mm-hmm. So I think it's important to not only look at the number of positive cases, but look at the number of negative cases that have come back to see that we are simply doing more tests and you're going to see more numbers. So I think that's in everybody's mind.
Yeah, and we're certainly something that we're going to be following for the rest of the year as mm-hmm. well. And you know, as you talked about businesses opening back up and growing here in the city of Mosinee, there's one topic that you and I have been talking about quite a bit, and that's the possibility of a new franchised hotel here in the city. Mm-hmm. Now, the hotel industry is one that's really taken it on the chin here mm-hmm. recently. We've seen properties all across the region temporarily lay off staff, furlough staff. I mean, nights are getting canceled. People just aren't traveling. But yet that's still a viable option here in Mosinee, and one mm-hmm. that you and I were talking just a little bit ago might already have been a done deal if not for the current state of the economy, correct?
Well, we're still actively pursuing a larger hotel, well, larger for by our standards in a small community, coming to Mosinee, and that would be a game changer for our business community here. We lose a lot of traffic. We did a feasibility study, I think about a year or more ago at this point, and the feasibility study we did was to tell us from an independent, can Mosinee support another hotel? It came back positive. And it said, you lose a lot of traffic coming into CWA, for instance, that will go elsewhere, Cedar Creek, Wausau, Stevens Point, and you have a lot of business right here in your community. Why not have another hotel so people can stay close to the airport when they want to leave? So we were losing a lot of that traffic, and we did get interest from a hotel. We continue to be in active negotiations with them. We were in negotiations before the pandemic, and surprisingly, we still are. And we're getting, I think, closer to a point where I can bring that to the Common Council, to our Plan Commission, for their input and feedback to see if that's something they're interested in moving forward with. But I think it says a lot that we are still talking post-pandemic. As you mentioned, new hotels, especially franchise hotel, they fund a lot of their expansions with existing hotel revenue, and there is not a lot of existing hotel revenue since the pandemic hit. So I think it says a lot to our community that a hotel is still interested in having those discussions with us. And right now they're positive and they're moving forward, and hope to have an update for you on that very soon.
Yeah, and as much as you can, give us an idea of what those negotiations have been like with this property. Have they been saying some things like, yes, we would like to move forward right now, but we just need to pull back the reins because, again, the income's just not there?
Yeah, I think, without getting into any of the specifics, I think your assumption is correct that there's a concern out there among the industry of pulling the trigger tomorrow and committing to something immediately, because I think, like a lot of industries, we're all in sort of a wait and see approach right now. Beyond hotels, I'm in business myself, and I work with a lot of business clients in different industries, and as I talk to them, I ask how it's going, and they say, well, we're staying alive. We're not killing it right now, but we're staying alive, and we feel some things are starting to come back. And I hope the same is true for the hotel industry. I mean, the hotel industry depends on tourism and business travel. As you know, or perhaps don't, I sit on the airport board as part of my responsibilities with the county. And passenger travel is down well over 90% there in terms of enplanements. So that gives you a sense of where travel's at right now. But they are optimistic that they're already seeing tourism is starting to come back. And I think business travel will start to come back too, because as I mentioned at the outset of our talks here, there is no substitute for an in-person meeting with somebody. So I think as all that stuff starts to pick back up, so will the hotel industry. But right now, the sense I'm getting is, no, we're not going to pull the trigger tomorrow, and I wouldn't expect them to, because we are still coming out of this and seeing, is this going to be a big bounce back right away, or is this another 2008 that's going to take years to dig out of?
Yeah, there's certainly nobody with that crystal ball right now, and if there was, they would certainly be one of the most powerful people on the planet right now.
Yeah,
probably.
I'm not going to profess to be that guy. So.
Right, and just one more then before we let you go. Talking about tax revenue, and it kind of implying throughout this whole interview that that's going to be down this year. I don't think that's a secret that anybody's been holding close to the vest right now. What are you anticipating as far as the budgeting process comes up for 2021? Do you have any sense of how that could impact your spending next year yet?
Well, we'll be getting into the budget this fall, like all municipalities, and as we talked before, our biggest source of revenue, and this is somewhat unique to Wisconsin as you look throughout the country, is property tax revenue. Municipalities' number one source is property taxes. Behind that is general state aid, and behind that is transportation revenue. Again, things were good before the pandemic. The state was looking at in excess of $800 million above projections for revenue. Now tax receipts are down, I think, $800 million. Some of that is skewed because we'll see what happens in mid-July, because there was an extension for tax filings to mid-July. So some people didn't file as they typically would, pay as they typically would in April. So we'll see how bad it really is for the state. I haven't heard that there's a definitive plan for a budget repair bill right now at the state level, which would put things like our state aids into jeopardy. And if those go down, obviously the one place to make it up is property taxes. And I sincerely hope that's not where we go. I am going to do everything that I can to make sure that we try and hold the line on property taxes. I've done it the last 2 years. We have been able to hold that line on property taxes. But last year, for instance, in large part, we were able to do that because of a bump in general transportation aid. So those things play very hand in hand, and as we move into the budget season, we'll see if those estimations, we will get estimations in around August as to here's what you will be getting in general transportation aid, here's what you will be getting in shared revenue, and here's what you'll be getting in personal property tax aid come next year. So you can take that for the most part to the bank when you go to do your budgets this fall. So I think we'll know very soon if the state will be holding the line on that stuff, and I of course hope they do.
Yeah, and it's something that, again, we're all in the same boat right now. It's impacting everyone across the board. I mean, even the lottery has said that they've made changes, so the lottery credit that some taxpayers get might be there, or it might be different this year. So it's something that we will all be keeping an eye on as we go into September and October, right?
Yes, and it's funny you mention it, because it's tough at the local level, because people get their property tax bill from the municipality, and there's a fair amount of people, I'm sure, I know before I got into local government, you didn't pay much attention. There's numerous taxing entities on there. There's your city, there's your school district, your county. There used to be a state property tax, and then you have to look at the lottery credit. So if your property taxes go up one year, it may have nothing to do with the person who sent you the property tax bill. Your taxes may actually went down at the local level, but your school tax may have went up, or vice versa. So I encourage people, if when they get a tax bill in December, to take a look at that, because as I said at the city line item, we really want to try hard to hold the line on that. So.
Again, we'll see where that what happens with that as the rest of the year goes on. Always appreciate the time.
Sure.
Mr. Mayor, we'll talk again in the near future.
Thank you very much.